Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm headed to Winco. I thought I would do a video that's basically along the lines of eating for $1 a day. I'm just going to spend about $2 and then I'm going to head back home and see what I can make. Here are all of my ingredients, and unfortunately Winco started using these crazy bags that are not see-through. Apparently there's a new law that they're not allowed to have bags with an opening less than 15 inches. So I have no idea what that's about, but here are my items. And I do have a recipe that's been on my bucket list for a while now that I want to try. So I got all of the ingredients for that. I've got rice. So I'm going to make a Persian rice dish called tadig. I picked up these lasagna-ish like noodles. I really wanted the long noodles, but they didn't have those, unfortunately. So I just went ahead and got those. And then I have some chopped dates. I have some navy beans, a small amount of lentils. I have some of these raisins. These are the mixed raisins. I wanted some black raisins, but they were completely sold out. And I thought that these were going to break my budget because they were a little bit more, but fortunately they were super inexpensive. So that was good. And then I got a zucchini that will be good with the pasta or in a soup. And you guys are not gonna believe how much I got these 2 green beans for. They were only 1 cent for both of these. And I'm gonna show you on the receipt here, just because it does seem like such an unbelievable price. And then I got this cute little carrot that's going to go a really long way. I thought I would use that in maybe some soup or something. And then I really needed this onion for my recipe. And had I not wanted to make this special recipe this week, I would have not purchased this onion and I would have spent that money for some extra lentils. Fortunately, they did have a fairly good deal on onions and I was able to find a very small one. And then I picked up some linguine for a pasta dish, and I was kind of thinking of doing something with the onions and zucchini and maybe a few dates. Before I get started, I thought it would be a great idea to head over to my local Persian market. They have a buffet section where they sell a variety of rices that are popular in their culture, and I haven't tried any of them. I've been shopping here for years, but I just never buy their hot food. And so today I thought, finally, now is my chance. I'm gonna make one of these dishes. It would be nice to know at least what the flavors taste like and hopefully get some kind of a reference point for my own recipe. And the only problem is when I was there, their glass was kind of fogged up and I wasn't able to see the dishes very well, but they kind of layer it with some dried raisins and some nuts and things like that. And what I ended up doing is just asking for some samples of these items, and then I picked my favorite 2 from these. And as you can see, some of these have lentils and some have some little dried raisins. Some even have some little, well, I think they're currants. They're called currants, but they're like little cranberries. So here were my 2 favorites. And I really didn't want this much rice, but I just wanted to have enough to get a good try of this. Anyway, the one on the right does have some, looks like sliced dates in it, along with the lentils and the little raisins or currants, whatever those are, and then the white rice. And I have to say that actually all of the rices that I tried have to be some of the fluffiest rice I've ever tried in my life. It is a completely different rice experience. It's like each rice is kind of floating. It's like eating clouds of rice, if that makes any sense. It's just incredibly fluffy. So that is really delicious. It's a bit of a savory sweet combo. Eating that one, it's just a really nice mix. And then the one on the left was so interesting to me because I've never seen anything like it. At first, I thought that these little things in it were slivers of garlic, but then I realized they're actually fava beans. But they're kind of buttery and just very, very delicate tasting. But the herb in this is dill, and I've never had anything like it, but it was delicious. And I was trying to, make my meal throughout the day, but I kept coming back to this and having a bite here and there. It was just so delicious. I don't know which one I like better. I actually think I might like the one on the left a little bit better with the dill. I'm excited to try to recreate that. And I've noticed that they do have lots of other varieties. Like I found one variety with the rice with some tomato base in it with green beans. And I thought that was interesting. But anytime you have all of these variations of meals centered around rice, it just becomes a very inexpensive meal. Sometimes I add in minced meat. You can also add in like ground beef. I guess when I think of minced meat, I don't know, that's not really a term that we use in the US. But I know somebody at the buffet at work brought in some that had some meat in it. And the meat was like beef, but it was very, very small pieces. But I know that you can also do like ground beef as well. And now that I've sampled some of this delicious rice, I'm excited to explore some other kinds of variations. And here are just a few pictures that I was able to find that show some variations of the meals with rice. And I have no idea what kind of rice this is or culture, but I thought it was so interesting with the big, huge pot and the layers of rice with veggies. Here are all of the ingredients for the recipe that I want to make, and it's called arroz polo, which basically just means rice with lentils, but I'm also making tadig, which refers to the crispy bottom. I have rice, raisins, onions, dates, lentils, turmeric, cinnamon, and cardamom. And I'm going to be using some salt. A lot of people use butter here, but I don't have any butter, so I'm not going to use it. And I've had this saffron in my pantry, and so I thought I would try it for the first time in this recipe. It is purely optional, but I do just want to try it because it's been on my bucket list for a long time now. And if you're not familiar with saffron, it is one of the more expensive spices, but it is highly coveted in Persian cuisine. So it would be nice for me to at least know what this tastes like, and I'll let you know what I think of it. If you do decide that you want to try this, it is going to be less expensive to pick it up in a Persian market. And the reason for that is that Iran is the world's largest producer of saffron. Saffron grows from a flower called the saffron crocus, and the spice comes from the bright red stigmas of the flower. And the reason the spice is more expensive is because it's very labor intensive to hand harvest the stigma. And I was surprised to find out that it's actually a perennial, which means that if you plant it in your garden, it grows back every year. So if you do enjoy the taste of saffron, you could easily grow some of these plants for your own use, making it much more affordable. I smelled this and it has a very musky scent. It's an odd scent that I can't really place. It's very earthy, almost like it's giving off tobacco vibes. It's so strange. But anyway, I'm going to give it a fair shot and see what I think. I'm going to go ahead and get started on the recipe, and I'm going to wash and rinse my rice until it runs clear. And one of the reasons I've been so apprehensive about cooking this type of cuisine is because of the way they cook their rice. It's just so foreign to the way that I cook my own rice. However, I will say that rice was so fluffy, I am willing to try this. So if you notice, I did add some salt here. I ended up spending a good portion of my day watching lots of videos about how Persians actually make this, and I saw quite a few variations, obviously, as you would find in any culture, in the recipes. Many of the people cooked the lentils until they were firm. So just al dente. And then you're going to rinse those off. And then we'll finish cooking these later with the rice. And to make sure that they stop cooking, I'm rinsing these in cold water. I chopped up about 3/4 of the onion. I'm saving the other part for my other meals. Typically in these recipes, they use these tiny raisins, and I don't have access to those. So I just got these, and I'm gonna just chop them into small bite-sized pieces so that when you bite into them, you don't want it to be too overpowering, just kind of a sweet accent in the rice. And I was also surprised to see that they have green raisins. If I would have thought about it, obviously, you have green grapes, so you could have green raisins, but it's always just a little shocking to see what else is out there on the global market. An important step in making this recipe is choosing the correct pot. I'm making probably 2 to 3 servings. So I think that this is going to be about the right size. It is also non-stick, which is very important, and it has a lid. If you don't use a good non-stick pan, the rice is going to stick to the bottom and it's just going to make a really big mess. I'm just going to use a very small amount of this. They say that a little goes a long way, and especially if I don't like this, I don't want it to ruin the entire dish. But again, this is purely optional. The other spices are going to give the rice a delicious flavor. And then I'm going to bloom the spice with some hot water. While that's sitting, I'll go ahead and boil my rice. And this is the part that is very uncomfortable for me because this just is not the way that I'm used to making rice, and I just don't know how this is going to turn out. But based on the rice that I ate earlier, I'm thinking that this might be a superior way to make it. And typically basmati rice is used here, but I'm using the long grain rice just because that was what was less expensive. Generally, this is boiled for 5 minutes, and you still want it to be al dente, and then you remove it and drain it. And I also added some water, cold water, to this to stop the cooking. And it's supposed to be a little bit hard at this point, but it already feels done to me. So I'm hoping this is going to turn out. I went ahead and added a small amount of the saffron water to this just because I didn't want my onions to burn, but you could just use regular water also. I'm using 1/4 teaspoon of cinnamon here, and this is going to be very subtle. I seem to be on a cinnamon kick lately. I used to think I didn't really care for cinnamon as much, but I find I'm really enjoying it this winter. I've got my cinnamon black tea I've been drinking. I've made a few dishes with cinnamon as well that I've really enjoyed. Then I'm just going to add in my chopped raisins and a few of the dates. And this is the mixture that's going to go into the rice. And I'm just adding a small amount again of the saffron water just to rehydrate those dates, and also the raisins too. I want those to be soft in the rice. So I don't expect to have a perfect dish on my first time trying this method. I would imagine I'll find what I like best and tweak this a bit. And I noticed that a lot of times they use the saffron water to give the rice some color. And I think I did use too much water with my saffron threads. It is very mild. And I guess that could do with the quality of my saffron as well. But I'm going to add a little bit to a small amount of the rice just to give it some more visual interest, and then add this into the pan. And here's the final pot that we're going to make our tadik in. And tadik in Persian literally means bottom of the pot. So I'm adding a little bit of turmeric here to the bottom and just a few remaining pieces of saffron. This is where you're going to get the color and the flavoring in the very bottom of the pot when we get that crispy layer. A lot of people add butter here. I definitely recommend it if you have it. And instead of adding salt like I did, you could just add the salted butter in there, and then that would give it the same amount. But I'm kind of trying to replicate without the butter by just adding a little bit of salt. And then I'm kind of moving my pan around so I get the color around the edges as well. Because when we flip our pan over and we have the crispy tadig, then that's what's going to look so beautiful. So I add my drained rice here. And this is where it gets a little bit confusing for me because I wasn't sure how much water to add back in, and my rice is really already cooked. But we're supposed to steam this, and most people said for about 50 minutes to get a nice crispy golden brown on the bottom. So I'm just going to mix this together. And this is the onions with the lentils and the raisins and the dates. And then I'm adding some of my colored rice on top. Now, if you don't have saffron, obviously turmeric, you can use that as a coloring agent as well. And you might even be able to think of some others. If you do use butter, you can drizzle the salted butter down over the top of this as well. We're going to cover this, and once you see the water beads dripping down with condensation, then you turn it down and you cover it with this towel. And make sure to try not to burn your house down. But then you're just going to cover this and set it on top of the pan. And then you just let this cook for about 30 minutes. And then I came back and I checked to see what the bottom was looking like. And the biggest thing is you are just wanting to develop a nice golden brown without burning. And so I decided to put the top back on and let this cook a little longer, just to make sure that I was being patient, that I would get the kind of crust that I wanted. And most people that I read about did this for about 50 minutes, so that's what I did as well. One recipe that I found didn't boil his lentils at all. He just steamed them for 50 minutes in this mixture, which I was a little afraid to try because I didn't think it would get them done enough. But you do kind of want your end result to be a little bit firm. You don't want them completely mushy in this mixture and falling apart. And I did add a little oil around the outside of this pan just to ensure that I was developing that crust. And I also added a little more salt. I found some recipes where they were adding quite a bit more salt during the soaking of the rice. And so I was afraid that mine wasn't going to be salty enough, especially since I wasn't using any butter. But here it is. It's the moment of truth. So let's see how this turned out. This actually looks perfect. You can see the little pieces in the bottom and it's nice and golden brown. It's crispy. Sometimes they add some garnishing of the top with some of the raisins and dates. And now I'm going to go ahead and give it a try. There's something very magical about crispy rice. I love the cinnamon in this. I still think I'm on the fence about the saffron. I did look it up and apparently it is an acquired taste. And since it is a little more expensive of an herb, I just don't know about it. But I guess I should try a different variety of saffron and maybe just try it one more time in my cooking. But what I really love about this is that slight cinnamony flavor. And that you have a little bit of the sweetness with the raisins, but it's not like it's in every bite. It's not overwhelming. It's a little salty, a little sweet. It's just very good. My rice is a little overcooked in terms of the top part of it, but it was saved by the crispy part. So next time I am going to perfect my cooking of the rice a little bit better. I'll probably only boil it for about 3 minutes in that first cooking stage. And I was able to get about 2 servings out of this. I'm sure that this is one of those recipes that is best to eat right after you make it. For anyone that's thinking this is just too many steps, I was also reading on a Reddit thread where someone made like a quasi tahdig with their rice cooker by running it through 2 cycles, putting a little oil in the bottom of the pan and adding some seasonings. So that's always an idea for a different kind of a recipe. And if you do that, I would put the oil around the edges in the second cycle of the rice, like I did here. Here are the ingredients that I have remaining from my $2 haul, and I thought I would go ahead and cook these white beans. My son Justin did gift me this Instant Pot for Christmas, so I'll be using that to cook the beans in. I don't have very many of these beans, but I thought I would add some lasagna noodles in and just make a good soup with it. And I'll be using most of my onion. I'll leave a little bit out for another recipe, but I'm chopping this into bite-sized pieces and I'm going to saute those in the bottom of this pan. I cut up a portion of the zucchini, half of a carrot, and 1 green bean, and I'm going to go ahead and taste this now. I didn't add very much salt, so I'm going to have to add a little bit in here, and I'm going to also cook my lasagna noodles, and then I'll just add in the zucchini and carrots in here, along with that single green bean, and then I'm going to add this mixture into the beans. And I do love the way this broth tastes. It has that rich bean flavor along with that onion. And I do also really love zucchini in my soups. I like to have them all cut in this uniform fashion. And I did add a little hot sauce to my bowl. And I enjoyed this a lot, actually. I'd wanted to make something different with some bigger lasagna noodles, but this turned out really good. If someone had some bread to eat along with this, I think it would make a perfect meal. And for my final recipe, I made these 2 bowls of linguine, and I used the rest of the vegetables and the onion, the carrots, and the last green bean that I had. I cut the onions into tiny slivers. I didn't want them to be overbearing. And then I added a small ladle of the pasta water, and then I added in the raisins and the dates just to reconstitute those. And then I added my vegetables into the mix. Here's what my noodles were looking like before. They were looking very bland, so I added a little turmeric just to give them a little color, which is what they do with all packaged food and frequently in restaurants. And it just looked more appetizing. This was so delicious. I loved this. Those few sweet notes in this linguine dish is no different than if you were making it with sun-dried tomatoes. It's that salty, savory, slightly sweet combination that is oh so delicious. So in conclusion, that was easily enough food to keep my belly full for 2 days. I hope you guys liked this video. Thanks so much for watching, friends. I'll see you next week.
Morning has broken, my windows are open. Wanna feel the wind blow through my hair. Which way do I follow? What happens tomorrow? I turn to you and hope you can guide the way.